What would you do if you discovered your mail-order bride was the widow of the most dangerous outlaw you ever hunted, a man whose death haunts your dreams in the dusty border town of Sundown, Texas, a retired bounty hunter seeking peace and a Confederate widow carrying secrets must decide if love can bloom from the ashes of violence or if the past will destroy any chance at redemption. Hit that like button and subscribe for this explosive tale of forgiveness, second chances, and love that defies everything. Retired bounty hunter's mail-order bride is the widow of the outlaw he killed years ago, Jack. Ace Thornton set down his whiskey glass and stared at the letter one more time, the neat handwriting swimming slightly in the lamplight of his saloon. At 45, after 20 years of hunting the worst men the frontier had to offer, he'd finally hung up his guns and bought the Sunset Saloon in Sundown, Texas. The border town was rough but profitable, situated perfectly for travelers heading to Mexico or deeper into Texas. But prosperity hadn't brought peace. The nights were too quiet without the hunt too long, without purpose beyond pouring drinks and breaking up fights. The ghosts of men he'd killed visited regularly, especially one. Tom Wildfire Collins, the last man he'd hunted, the one whose death had made him quit. The advertisement had been partially whiskey-inspired, partially desperate truth. Former lawman turned respectable, business owner, seeks companionship. Woman must be strong, understanding of past, willing to help run establishment. Widow with children, welcome. He'd emphasize widow because he understood loss, understood carrying ghosts. A woman who'd loved and lost would understand his own shadows. The response had come from an unexpected place. Georgia. Margaret Collins, 32 years old widow, with one son. Her husband had died 5 years ago. She wrote, leaving her struggling to survive in the war-torn South. She could cook, manage accounts, and wasn't afraid of hard work. Her photograph showed a handsome woman with sad eyes and prematurely gray streaks in her dark hair. Collins. The name had nagged at him, but Collins was common enough. There must be thousands of men named Collins who died 5 years ago. The war had taken so many. Now she was arriving and Jack stood on the platform of Sundown's small depot, his best black suit making him sweat in the Texas heat. The whole town knew he was meeting a mail-order bride. News traveled fast in a place with more saloons than churches. "Nervous Ace," called out Bob Martinez, the sheriff who'd taken over when Jack retired from hunting. "Should I be, man your age, taking on a woman and child? I'd be terrified." The train whistle cut through the desert air, black smoke visible long before the engine. Jack's hand instinctively went to where his gun used to rest, finding only empty air. Old habits died hard even 2 years into retirement. The train wheezed to a stop and passengers began disembarking. Cowboys, merchants, a priest, and then her. Margaret Collins stepped onto the platform, and Jack's world tilted. He knew that face had seen it in a photograph carried by Tom Collins, the one personal item the outlaw had begged him to send to his wife before he died. The same photograph Jack had never sent, too ashamed of how Tom had died. She was older now, worn by hardship, but unmistakably the woman Tom had talked about in his final moments. "Tell Maggie I'm sorry. Tell her I tried to come home." Behind her, a boy of about 10 jumped down and Jack's knees nearly buckled. The child was Tom's image. Same sandy hair, same stubborn jaw, same way of scanning for threats that spoke of hard living. Margaret's eyes found his and he saw the moment of recognition. Not of him personally, but of what he was. A killer knew another killer, even retired ones. "Mr. Thornton." Her voice carried Georgia honey over steel. "Mrs. Collins." The name burned his throat. "Welcome to Sundown." The boy stepped forward, protective of his mother. "You're the saloon keeper." "I am. You must be—" James Thomas Collins. Named for his father, of course. Tom's full name had been Thomas James Collins. Jack forced himself to breathe normally, to shake the boy's hand without trembling. "Pleased to meet you, James. Ma says you used to be a lawman." "Of sorts." Jack picked up their bags, noting how light they were. Everything they owned in 2 carpet bags. "Let's get you settled." The walk to the saloon was torture. Margaret made polite observations about the town, while Jack's mind raced. She didn't know. Couldn't know. Tom had been killed in Arizona, not Texas. The wanted posters had never shown Jack's face, just his nickname, Ace, for his accuracy with a gun. But God, what cruel joke was this? Of all the widows in America, Tom Collins's wife had answered his advertisement. The Sunset Saloon was closed during the day, giving them privacy to tour the premises. The living quarters were upstairs. 3 bedrooms, a sitting area, basic but clean. "It's perfect," Margaret said, and seemed to mean it. "Much nicer than what we left in Georgia." "If you don't mind my asking, what happened to your husband?" Margaret's face went carefully blank. "He died out west. Working, we were told. Sending money home until he couldn't anymore." Working, that's what she thought Tom had been doing. Not robbing stages, not killing 3 men in Tucson, not dying in a canyon with Jack's bullet in his chest. "I'm sorry for your loss. It was 5 years ago. We've managed." But her eyes said they'd barely managed. "Ma's tough," James piped up. "She worked 3 jobs to keep us fed, washing, sewing, and teaching letters to rich folks' kids who were too dumb to learn regular." "James," Margaret scolded, but there was warmth in it. "It's true that Morrison boy was dumber than a fence post." Jack found himself almost smiling despite his turmoil. The boy had his father's irreverent spirit. "Why don't you get settled in?" Jack suggested. "We'll have supper at 6. The saloon opens at 7, but you don't need to worry about that tonight." "I'd like to help," Margaret said. "I should learn the business if I'm to be useful." Useful. Such a practical word for what should be a marriage. That evening, Margaret proved her worth immediately. She took over the kitchen, producing a meal that had Jack's regular bartender, Miguel, nearly in tears of joy. "Finally real food," Miguel exclaimed. "No offense, Jefe, but your cooking could kill a man faster than your guns. Though my husband used to say I could make a feast from nothing." Margaret said, then caught herself, the mention of Tom hanging in the air. Jack watched her work the saloon that night. She had a natural way with the customers, friendly but distant enough to discourage improper advances, firm with the rowdy ones, gentle with the lonely ones. James helped by collecting empty glasses, charming tips from even the stingiest cowboys with his quick wit. "Your boy's got charm," Bob Martinez observed, stopping by for his nightly beer. "Like his father," Margaret said softly, and Jack's hand clenched on the bottle he was holding. After closing, they sat in the empty saloon counting the night's take. It was the best Friday they'd had in months. "You're good at this," Jack said. "I've served worse men in worse places. These cowboys are gentlemen compared to carpetbaggers in Atlanta. About your husband, I don't talk about Tom." Her voice was firm. "He's dead. That's all that matters." "But Tom," she'd said his name. Jack's chest tightened. "But you should know," she continued, "he wasn't the man I married. War changed him, made him hard desperate. He went west to find work, but I think he found trouble instead." "What makes you say that?" "The money he sent. Sometimes too much for honest work, sometimes nothing for months. Then the letter saying he'd died. No details, just that he'd been killed and buried out west." She looked at Jack directly. "I know what desperation drives men to, Mr. Thornton. I don't judge. I just survive." That night, Jack lay awake replaying Tom Collins' death in his mind. The chase through the Arizona canyons, Tom's horse going lame, the final confrontation. "You don't have to do this, Ace," Tom had said, bleeding from a shoulder wound. "I've got a wife, a boy. Just let me go home." "Can't do that, Tom. 3 dead men in Tucson say you've got to face justice. They drew first. Maybe, maybe not. Either way, you're worth $5,000. Blood money. That's all you hunters care about." The gunfight had been quick. Tom was fast, but Jack was faster. As Tom lay dying, he had pulled out the photograph. "Tell Maggie I'm sorry. Tell her I tried to come home. Tell her I love her and James," Jack had promised. Then burn the photograph, unable to face sending it with news of Tom's death. Let her think he'd died of fever or accident. Anything but the truth. Now Tom's family was under his roof, and the weight of his lie was crushing. 3 weeks passed in careful routine. Margaret transformed the saloon, adding small touches that made it less of a den and more of a gathering place. Checkered curtains on the windows, fresh flowers on the bar, better food that drew customers earlier and kept them longer. James had started school but helped in the evenings, showing a talent for numbers that impressed Jack. The boy was smart, maybe too smart, asking questions about Jack's past that got uncomfortably specific. "Ma says you were a lawman, but Miguel says you were a bounty hunter. What's the difference?" "Lawmen work for the law. Bounty hunters work for money, Jack replied carefully. Which was better? Neither, both involve killing son. That's never good. Did you ever kill anyone who didn't deserve it? The question hit like a punch. I don't know, I hope not. My pa was killed out west. Maybe you knew him, Tom Collins. Jack's bottle slipped, whiskey splashing on the bar. Common name, boy. Lots of Tom Collinses out there. But James watched him with eyes too knowing for 10 years old. The revelation came as Jack had always feared it would, suddenly and devastatingly. A man walked into the saloon one night, weathered and trail-worn. Jack recognized him immediately. Dan Harmon, another retired bounty hunter. Ace Thornton, I'll be damned. Heard you'd settled down but didn't believe it. Dan, Jack's voice was tight. Been a while. 2 years since you quit, right after that business with Wildfire Collins. Dan didn't notice Margaret freezing behind the bar, didn't see James stop wiping tables. Hell of a thing that. Man begging for his family while you put him down. No wonder you hung up your guns. The silence was deafening. Every eye in the saloon turned to look at them, but Jack only saw Margaret's face draining of color, saw James's expression shifting from confusion to horrible understanding. Margaret whispered. You're the one who killed Tom. Margaret, She slapped him, hard enough to snap his head back hard enough that the crack echoed through the silent saloon. You knew. This whole time you knew who we were. I didn't know until you arrived. The name Collins, I didn't connect. Liar. James launched himself at Jack, small fists pummeling. You killed my pa. You murdered him. Thus Jack didn't defend himself, letting the boy's rage spend itself until Miguel pulled James away. Margaret stood trembling, tears streaming down her face. His last words. Tell me his last words. He said he loved you, both of you. Said to tell you he was sorry that he tried to come home. And you never did, never sent word. I couldn't, I was ashamed. So you let us think he died of fever, died working, honestly died with dignity. Then you brought us here to what, torture yourself? Torture us, yeah. I didn't know it was you when you answered the advertisement. When I saw you at the station, I should have sent you away, but what? You needed help. You both did, and I needed to make something right. Margaret laughed bitterly. Make it right? You killed my husband and thought feeding his widow would make it right. Tom killed 3 men in Tucson. He was wanted dead or alive. He was defending himself. He wrote me about it. They tried to rob him. Maybe not. I only knew what the wanted poster said. And the money. How much was my husband's life worth to you? $5,000. The words tasted like ashes. 5,000. You destroyed my family for $5,000. I never collected it. That stopped her. What? After he died, after what he said about you and James, I couldn't take it. Gave it to the church in Tucson for their orphans. That doesn't bring Tom back. Nothing brings him back. But Margaret, whatever he was before he'd become an outlaw, he'd have been caught, eventually hanged, probably. At least with me it was quick, clean. She slapped him again. Don't you dare try to make yourself a hero in this story. Dan Harmon, who'd been frozen in shock, finally spoke. Jesus, Ace, this is Colin's widow. Why didn't you say something? And say what? Welcome to sundown, I killed your husband. The saloon had erupted in whispers. Margaret grabbed James's hand. We're leaving. Tonight. Where will you go? Jack asked desperately. Anywhere you're not. Margaret, please, you have no money, nowhere to go. We survive without Tom. We'll survive without you. But Sheriff Martinez stepped forward. Hold on now. Mrs. Collins, I understand you're upset, but it's night and there's no stage until Tuesday. At least stay until then. I won't stay under his roof. You can stay at the boarding house. Mrs. Patterson, the boarding house owner, offered. No charge. Margaret nodded stiffly. She and James gathered their few belongings while the saloon watched in stunned silence. At the door, James turned back. I hate you, he said to Jack. I'll hate you forever. Then they were gone. Jack stood in his empty saloon, surrounded by people but utterly alone. He'd known this day would come, but nothing had prepared him for the pain in Margaret's eyes, the hatred in James's voice. Well, Dan said uncomfortably, that was something. Get out, Jack said quietly. Everyone out. The saloon emptied quickly. Only Miguel remained. Jefe, you should have told her. When she stepped off the train with everything she owned in 2 bags, when I saw how thin the boy was, when she smiled for the first time serving customers. Jack poured himself a whiskey with shaking hands. There was never a good time. No, but there was a right time, and it was before now. For 3 days, Margaret and James stayed at the boarding house. Jack sent money for their expenses, which Margaret returned unopened. He tried to visit, but James threw rocks at him from the window. The town was divided. Some felt Jack had done wrong hiding the truth. Others argued he'd been trying to help. Everyone had an opinion, but none of it mattered to Jack. All that mattered was the pain he'd caused. On the 4th day, trouble arrived in the form of 3 men from Tom Collins' old gang. They'd heard Wildfire's widow was in town and came looking for something Tom had supposedly hidden, stolen army gold from their last job together. They cornered Margaret outside the general store. Mrs. Collins, the leader, a man called Scarface Pete, tipped his hat mockingly. Heard you were in town. Your husband owed us. Tom's dead. His debts died with him. Not this debt. He hid 30,000 in army gold. Said only his wife would know where, so you're going to tell us or things get unpleasant for you and the boy. I don't know anything about gold. Pete grabbed her arm roughly. Then you better remember real quick. The click of a hammer being cocked made everyone freeze. Jack stood 10 feet away, his old Colt 45 steady in his hand. He'd sworn never to carry it again, but Margaret's danger had changed that. Let her go. Well, Ace Thornton, the man who killed Wildfire, this ain't your business. It is now. Let her go, leave town, don't come back. Or what you'll kill us like you killed Tom, if necessary. Pete laughed. You've gone soft, Ace, running a saloon playing house with Tom's widow. Oh yeah, we heard about that. Pretty sick, even for a bounty hunter. Last warning. Pete went for his gun. He was fast, but Jack was still Ace Thornton. 3 shots, 3 men down, Pete and 1 other dead, the 3rd wounded, and running. Margaret stood frozen, blood splattered on her dress. Are you hurt? Jack asked, not approaching, knowing she wouldn't want him near. No. Her voice was barely a whisper. Sheriff Martinez arrived, took in the scene, saw self-defense. They were threatening Mrs. Collins. Several witnesses confirmed. As Martinez dealt with the bodies, Margaret finally looked at Jack. You saved me. Tom would have wanted me to. Tom would have killed you for touching me. Probably. Why did you do it? Really, Jack holstered his gun, the weight of it familiar and terrible. Because whatever else I am, whatever I've done, I won't let harm come to you or James, not while I'm breathing. Margaret stared at him for a long moment, then walked away without another word. That night, she appeared at the saloon after closing. Jack was drinking, alone, the events of the day weighing on him. James is asleep, she said. Mrs. Patterson is watching him. You shouldn't be here. I need to know about Tom. Everything. So Jack told her about the chase, the gunfight, Tom's last words. He told her about burning the photograph in shame, about the nightmares, about quitting bounty hunting because Tom's death had broken something in him. He mentioned you constantly at the end, Jack said, how he'd promised to come home to be a better man. He loved you both so much. But not enough to stop robbing, Margaret said bitterly. He said the Tucson men drew first. Maybe they did, but he was already wanted for other robberies. The path only ended one way, with you. If not me, someone else. Someone who might not have been as quick as clean. Someone who might have brought him in alive to hang. Margaret was quiet for a long time. I knew, she finally said. Not the details, but I knew Tom had turned outlaw. The money he sent, the long absences, the fear in his letters. I knew. Then why? Because I loved him anyway. Because he was James's father. Because I kept hoping he'd come home and be the man he was before the war broke him. The war broke a lot of men. It broke you too, didn't it? Not the Civil War, but the war against outlaws, the constant killing. Yes. Is that why you advertised for a widow? Someone else broken? Maybe, or maybe I just wanted someone who'd understand living with ghosts. Margaret stood to leave, then paused. Those men today, they mentioned gold. Hidden gold. Probably a lie. Outlaws always claim hidden treasure. Maybe, but Tom did send me something once. Said to keep it safe, never sell it, unless James and I were starving. She pulled out a key from around her neck. Safety deposit box in Austin. I've never opened it. Jack's pulse quickened. Stolen gold. I don't know. I was afraid to look. If it's stolen, it needs to be returned. And if it's not, then it's yours. Margaret fingered the key. Would you come with me to Austin? I'm afraid to go alone. It was more than she was saying. She was offering a chance at something. Not forgiveness maybe, but understanding. What about James? He needs to know the truth, all of it. About his father, about you, about the choices men make. The trip to Austin took 3 days by stage. James sat as far from Jack as possible, but he listened when Jack talked about Tom's courage in the face of death, about his love for his family. He was brave, James asked finally. Very brave. Faced his end like a man. But he was still an outlaw. Yes. Good men can do bad things, James. Bad men can do good things. Most of us are both. In Austin, the safety deposit box revealed not gold, but bonds. Confederate bonds worthless now, and a letter from Tom. My dearest Maggie, if you're reading this, I'm dead. These bonds were my stake, going to be worth something when the South rose again. Now they're just paper. I'm sorry. I tried to make it right, tried to find gold to replace what I'd lost, but I just sank deeper. Tell James his father loved him, but couldn't find his way home. All my love, Tom, Margaret cried, holding the worthless bonds. He died for nothing, killed for nothing. He died trying to provide for you. That's not nothing. But it was all for worthless paper. Jack pulled out a bank draft from his pocket. $5,000, the bounty I never collected. It's yours. I don't want blood money. It's not blood money. It's Tom's money. He earned it with his death. It should go to his family. I can't. Then take it for James, for his education, his future. Let something good come from all this pain. Margaret looked at the draft, at her son, at Jack. You're trying to buy forgiveness. No, I'm trying to make right what can be made right. Tom can't come back, but his son can have a future. That night in the Austin hotel, Margaret knocked on Jack's door. I've been thinking, she said, about Tom, about you, about everything. And Tom chose his path. You chose yours. They crossed and Tom died. That's the truth. Hating you won't bring him back. You have every right to hate me. Yes, I do, but hate is exhausting and I'm so tired, Jack. It was the first time she'd used his given name. I came west for a new start. Maybe that's still possible. What are you saying? I'm saying we're both broken people trying to heal. Maybe we can help each other. Not as husband and wife, not yet, maybe never. But as partners. Business partners, life partners, raise James together, run the saloon together, see if something grows from shared purpose. And if it doesn't, then we part as friends with James provided for. Jack extended his hand. Partners. She shook it, her grip firm. Partners. They returned to sundown to find the saloon thriving under Miguel's temporary management. Margaret resumed her duties, Jack resumed his. James slowly, carefully began to speak to Jack again. The breakthrough came when Jack started teaching James to shoot. I don't want him learning violence, Margaret protested. It's not violence, it's protection. Every man needs to know how to protect what's his. Like you protected us from Pete. Yes. She watched them practice, saw Jack's patience with the boy, saw James's growing respect for the man who'd killed his father. It was complicated, painful, but real. One evening, 6 months after that first confrontation, James asked, would my pa have been proud of me? Very proud, Jack said. You're brave like him, smart like your mother. Are you trying to replace him? No, no one could replace your father in your heart. I'm just trying to be here now. Mom cries sometimes. About him? That's okay. Grief doesn't go away. We just learn to carry it. Do you grieve for the men you killed? Every day. Even the bad ones. Even them. Every life matters to someone. Margaret overheard this conversation, saw Jack's genuine pain, his careful honesty with James. That night she came to his room. You're a good man, Jack Thornton. I'm a killer, Margaret. You were. Now you're a saloon keeper, a teacher to my son, a protector. She sat beside him on the bed. Tom's been dead 6 years. I've been a widow longer than I was a wife. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm tired of sleeping alone, tired of being half a person. She took his hand. I'm not asking for love, just comfort. Margaret, I know you loved someone once, before the hunting. Miguel told me. She died, consumption. I started hunting to pay for her treatment, but it wasn't enough. So we're both haunted. Yes. Then let's be haunted together. They became lovers that night, careful and tentative, two damaged people finding solace in shared warmth. It wasn't passionate love, not at first, but something deeper. Understanding, acceptance, recognition. The town accepted it with surprising ease. Most felt justice had been served in its own strange way. Tom's family was cared for, Jack had found peace, and the saloon had never been better. But the past wasn't quite done with them. The survivor from Pete's gang returned with reinforcements, catching Jack alone at the saloon one morning. 5 men, all armed, all wanting revenge. You killed our brother's ace. They drew first. Don't matter. Blood demands blood. The gunfight was brutal. Jack killed 3 before taking a bullet in the shoulder, another in the leg. The other 2 fled when Sheriff Martinez arrived. Margaret found Jack bleeding out on the saloon floor. Don't you dare die, she said, pressing cloth to his wounds. Don't you dare leave us. Trying not to, Jack gasped. I haven't told you I love you yet. You don't have to. I do love you. Not the same as Tom, different, but real. So you can't die. That's not great motivation. James needs you. I need you. We're a family now. Family, Tom. Jack repeated the word, foreign but warming. He survived barely. The recovery was long painful. Margaret nursed him with fierce devotion, while James ran the saloon with Miguel's help. I'm proud of you, Jack told James one evening. You're not my pa, James said but gently. No, but I hope I'm something. You're Jack. That's enough. When Jack finally recovered, he found the saloon transformed. Margaret had expanded, adding a restaurant section. James had reorganized the liquor inventory for better profit. They'd made it truly theirs. We're getting married, Margaret announced one evening. Are we? Jack was amused. Yes, properly this time. No lies, no secrets, just truth. The truth is, I killed your first husband. The truth is, you saved his family. The truth is, Tom would want us happy. You think he'd approve? I think he'd understand. He always was practical. They married in the saloon, surrounded by the town that had watched their strange journey. Judge Harper officiated, joking about the unconventional nature of their courtship. Do you, Jack Thornton, take this woman whose husband you killed to love and cherish? That's not traditional, Jack protested. Nothing about you two is traditional. Answer the question. I do. Do you, Margaret Collins, take this man who killed your husband to love and cherish? I do. Then God help you both. The wedding night was different from their first time together. The ghosts were still there, but quieter, making room for the living. Years passed. The Sunset Saloon became Thornton's family saloon and restaurant. James went to college, became a lawyer, defending men who deserve second chances. He never called Jack father, but the love was there. Margaret and Jack had 2 children together, a girl named Sarah after Jack's lost love, a boy named Thomas after Tom. Complicated, yes, but life was complicated. On what would have been Tom's 50th birthday, Margaret and Jack visited his grave in Arizona, finally marked properly. Thomas James Collins, husband, father, flawed man, loved always. James, now grown with his own family, placed flowers. Do you think he'd forgive us? Margaret asked. I think he'd want you happy, Jack said, even if happiness came from his enemy. You're not his enemy anymore. You're his family's protector. That's a strange way to see it. True, though. As they walked away, James said, tell me about the chase again, about how brave he was. Jack told the story he'd told many times about Tom Collins dying with courage, thinking of family. Each telling healed a little more, transformed tragedy into legacy. Back in Sundown, the saloon was full of life. Sarah was playing piano badly. Thomas was serving drinks, charming customers. The town had grown prospered, but the Thornton establishment remained its heart. No regrets, Margaret asked Jack as they watched their blended family work together. Many regrets, but not about this, not about us. Even though it started with death, everything ends with death. Not everything begins with redemption. Is that what we are, redemption? We're proof here, proof that the worst moments can lead to the best outcomes, that enemies can become family, that love is stronger than hate, even when hate seems justified. That night, as they closed the saloon, Jack found James standing by the old wanted poster they'd framed. Tom Wildfire Collins wanted dead or alive. Strange decoration, James said. Reminder, Jack corrected, of how we all came together. Through violence. Through choosing something better than violence. Your mother could have had me arrested, run out of town. I could have hidden the truth forever. Instead, we chose harder path. The right path. The only path that led to this family. James smiled Tom's smile, but without the darkness. Then I'm glad you were faster than my father that day. James, I mean it. He was heading toward a noose. You gave him a clean death and his family a future. That's not nothing. As the family gathered for their evening meal, Jack looked around the table. Margaret still beautiful in her strength. James with his wife and children. Sarah and Thomas products of an unlikely love. Miguel and his family long since adopted into their strange clan. They raised their glasses in the toast they developed over the years. To those we've lost, those we've found, and the courage to know the difference. To the difference, they echoed. Outside, the Texas sun set over sundown, painting the sky red as blood red as redemption. Inside, a family born from violence but sustained by love continued building something beautiful from broken pieces. Jack Thornton had spent 20 years taking lives. He'd spend the rest of his giving life, protecting life, celebrating life with the most unlikely partner, the widow of the last man he'd killed. Some would call it twisted, others would call it justice. Jack and Margaret called it grace. And in the end, grace was enough.